Yo, Facebook. Y'all see that Spider-Man movie? You know, that one great film. I'm just kidding. I didn't really think it was anything special. But there's that quote that with great power comes great responsibility, right? The Uncle Ben is dying or whatever it is. I saw the movie once. But an even better way of looking at this is that don't don't focus so much on the power, rather the responsibility, because the responsibility and taking that responsibility, as long as you're honest with yourself, that becomes your access point to achieving more, doing more, having more, and everything. Um, since a young age, I mean, I was never really supported to understand what responsibility actually means and what's the benefit of it. It was mainly like, oh, responsibilities, I want to avoid those. I want to not do those. But what I found over the past year and a half, especially, has been that the more that I can take on responsibility, the more that I'm just willing to take on, the more that I'm trusting myself to just figure it out, that has paid off so much. I found it fascinating. A week or so ago, I was looking into, for example, Warren Buffett and Jeff Bezos, and seeing just how big their organizations are. Because, so they're billionaires, right? At least on paper. At least when you Google it. So why do they have so much money? It's because they're so much smarter. It's just because they're willing to take on more responsibility and obviously handle that responsibility. And it's like, just look on Google how many employees that they have or how many people are they responsible for. It's like hundreds and hundreds of thousands. And I don't know about you, but in my self-honesty, if I was in that position right now to have 100,000, let's just say 100,000 employees, I think it's way more than that. You'd melt. You would melt. If you had to do what Jeff Bezos does for one day, you'd freaking melt. And how do we get to that level, though? Not necessarily that you're running Amazon. You have a company that does 2-day shipping and is, that whole thing. But to be at that level of influence, think how much influence Jeff Bezos has. And that is the power that comes from responsibility. The thing that's helped me the most with responsibility has been straight up. It's been restructuring and reworking myself on an inner level. Primarily using TechnoTutor and then doing writing through a course called DIP. I'm using TechnoTutor because I have to learn things and get it to that direct access memory level. Like, for example, if you think about your name or you think about tying a shoe, it's like you actually don't have to think about it, you just know it. So that's what I use TechnoTutor for, to know everything that's required to make more money, to build my business, to grow the business, to scale it, to know where to put money, when to put money in, when to take out profits, things like that. That requires a knowingness. And that's all a level of responsibility. And so as I use TechnoTutor, that allows me to process what's here and then be more effective with it. So that's cool. And then with the writing as well, like self-forgiveness writing through the DIP course, it allows me to let go of this stuff, like these thoughts and these recurring patterns and personalities that aren't serving me. So for example, like I was saying earlier, responsibility, let's go back to childhood. And if I used to not want to take responsibility, just straight up. And I would procrastinate. And I would literally avoid, for example, the responsibility of unloading the dishwasher. I would literally stay in my room because I knew the dishwasher was done and I didn't want to go and load it, which is just ridiculous, right? But that's just, it is what it was. It was what it was. But now I realize that, hey, with common sense, unloading the dishwasher is a good thing, right? It would support my family members or whoever I'm living with so that they can do things. It's not that hard to do, all of that. But guess what? That thought pattern, there's a whole construct inside me of wanting to avoid that responsibility. And it's not simple enough to just say, no, I'll just think differently. It's like you actually have to release that stuff and then recommit yourself and then real time in the real physical universe apply that change. And you may feel like you still don't want to do the dishes, but you'll understand why it makes sense, and then you just do it anyway. And as you do that, as I do this, right, every day, and I'm accumulating more responsibility, I'm taking on more and more and more and more and more, guess what? It's like all of life in reality opens up in a way that is not possible if you're not willing to take on responsibility. And now, when, for example, so what's on the horizon? In 21 days now, Jess and I move. We're going to have a house. We're going to have 10 acres of land. You'll see it in our upcoming stuff, right? I'll do live streams from there then. That is a lot more responsibility. It's further away from the city. It's just a lot more responsibility, right? Also have businesses that are growing. That's a lot more responsibility. Taking on more people, being responsible for helping more people, all of that. But I have a willingness to do it now, which I never had before. And that willingness now carries over, and it becomes like a cascading effect. So in August, there's an event in Orlando. It's for a group called Gin. And I'm looking at it. And in the past, I used to be like, oh, I don't know if I can afford it or whatever. Now I just know, no, it's my responsibility to get Jessica and I there. And there for a whole week. And not just there like, oh, yay, we got here finally. It's like, how can we get there and enjoy it and connect with people and network and add value to the community? That is the level of responsibility now that has become, it's almost automated. I hesitate to say it's automated because it still requires me to direct myself in the moment. And that's a big piece of responsibility, is in every moment, your ability to breathe and be present instead of just lost in your mind. And then you can choose to do whatever makes sense and whatever the best thing is in that situation, taking into consideration everyone around you and the consequence of everything you do. So it's like, because I've been building this responsibility muscle, you could say, within myself, I'm now able to just hear about, for example, the Gin event. And it's like, okay, I'm responsible for getting there. Cool. Get the tickets, get all that, get it before it sells out. And in the past, it would have been such a big deal for me to do that. And now it's like, nope, that's just a Monday. That's just what I do on Monday, is do that. Okay, Tuesday, this is what's up. Wednesday, this is what's up. And I share this because that's like a sense of power that I have now. And if you react to the word power, work on redefining that for yourself, because power is power. You need power. Your body's empowered right now, like literally the cells of your body and your heart and your pulse and everything. Like there's power in your body. That same power you can start to apply and affect change in your life. If you don't like where your life is, you have to start changing things. But you cannot change things if you have no power. And if you don't have power, it's because you're not taking responsibility on some level. So I would suggest, look into responsibility. Look into the word power. And then start to look at, where are you avoiding it? And you're going to keep time looping unless you take that responsibility. And time looping, I can do a future video on that, but this is just a wake-up call to people, because my guess is 90% of people will not fathom this and will not hear this, will not want to hear it, and just want to keep running the program of, I'll just procrastinate, I'll take the responsibility of my job so I get my paycheck. If that's what you want to do, okay, but there's a better way, and you can take more responsibility. And so I would really suggest, look at responsibility. And from my perspective, that's what it means to be a man, is being someone who is willing to take on that responsibility. Yeah, it might be uncomfortable. But guess what? As you do that, and you can learn how to manage and lead and grow and build, the payoff is phenomenal. You don't do it for the payoff, but the payoff is nice. You do it because it's who you are. Do it because it's who you are, to take responsibility. The opposite of responsibility is? Guess. It's blame. Blaming the other person, blaming the government, blaming your wife, blaming your husband, blaming the dog, blaming whoever. Instead of just automatically, instead of going into blame, go into responsibility. How am I responsible? How did I create this? And then from there, that's where you access your power and your ability to change things. Also, your ability to enjoy things. Like, I feel more happy now with the more responsibility I have more fulfillment, more purpose, and all of that than I've ever had before. I used to just chase that feeling of I want to feel good. I want to feel whatever. Now, I don't care about how I feel. I just want to figure out how can I take responsibility for what's going on in the world, and then over the next 5, 10, 15 years, really course correct everything in the world and accumulate that responsibility so that I can be in a level like a Jeff Bezos or like the president or in Congress or governor or whatever. Because that's a lot of responsibility to be there, but I don't see any other way for myself because I'm looking at the world and everything's on fire and it's all burning down. What's my responsibility in it? Am I just going to watch it burn, grab some popcorn and just watch the mess and then let myself get consumed and then screw over the generations to come? Or am I willing to take on that responsibility of what I can do from my point, empower others to do the same, support others to do the same? You get enough people together to all take responsibility for what's going on in the world. And over the next 5, 10, 15 years, we can actually change things. Like, for real. I'm talking like clean up the oceans, stop deforestation, change whatever the climate change thing is that's happening. I know it's debated what's going on. We are definitely polluting the environment, period. Stopping that, taking responsibility for that. But how do you stop systemic pollution? That takes a lot of responsibility. That involves getting a whole group of us into politics, into business, into NGOs, into nonprofits, all that, and affecting change there. Because even in those organizations, they're not operating from certain principles, such as the principle of what's best for all, and the fact that every human can have an elite level of education. That's overlooked. Bill Gates, right now, the man who's buying up all this farmland, creating these, fake meat burgers, and ran the most ruthless computer technology company ever. This man now, I know he's dressed like Mr. Rogers, but he ain't Mr. Rogers. That dude knows how to take on responsibility. But he also has a flawed view on the world, and that the average human cannot change and be educated. Right? Otherwise, we'd see a very different world. For all the money that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has put into education, you'd think we'd have better reading scores by now. But as the rates show, back in 2018, 2019, the National Report Card said that our reading rates were at the same level that they were in the early 90s. Red flag, red flag. No one knows what's going on when it comes to education. But guess what? How are we supposed to take on responsibility? Even understand what responsibility means. Does the average person even know what responsibility means? I don't think so. That's why I'm making this video. If it were common, I wouldn't, right? I'd just be being redundant. But I don't see many people talking about responsibility in a real, authentic way. Hence the videos. And that ability to understand responsibility and really, actually understand it and live it, that type of change, that's a real education. That's real education. Why didn't I ever learn the word responsibility when I went through school? In 16 years of formal education, nobody once sat down with me and actually explained what it means to fundamentally take responsibility for your life, your destiny, your purpose, what you're here to do for the world. Take responsibility for your community, for your family, for those around you. Why is that not taught in school? That should be a major freaking red flag. That should be a red giant banner. You ever drive by the freeway and there's a giant flags? We have them here in America in some parts. That level of red flag is what there should be. Then no one's teaching responsibility. And you could say, oh, there's this charter school down the road and they're all great and innovative and they're teaching this and they're teaching that. Okay, cool. I'm talking about at scale where it's guaranteed for every child. The one-off things, sure, there's a time and place for that and that's cool and I'm not knocking that. But I'm here taking responsibility to disrupt that entire education system. Much like what Amazon did to all of retail or what Microsoft did to all of computers. That is what we're doing with TechnoTutor, but to the entire education and schooling system. Universities, everything included. That is a lot of responsibility. Guess what? It's the most fun thing I've ever done. It is challenging. It's not easy. It's not an overnight fix. But guess what? It's like the coolest thing ever. Straight up. I mean, you see families, you see individuals changed. People that had no hope at all. People completely stuck, not effectively educated from their childhood. If you didn't get an effective education before the age of 7, you're literally not programmed to be successful. You can't be. Because it's not how the brain works. We have a natural learning ability phase, primarily between age 0 and 7. If you didn't get the vocabulary in there and stored, it ain't in there. That's why you have to go through then memory. But be honest, how much of school did you actually remember? How much of school are you able to understand and comprehend and process right now? Where you could say, oh yeah, this is what I learned then, and this is how it relates to this, and this is how it can relate to me making money, taking more responsibility, improving my life, improving the world. That is not taught in school. So, you want to take responsibility and change that? Or are you okay with just this being the way things are? Because if you're okay with that, that means you're complicit with all the abuse. You're complicit with the fact that there's still all this shit happening in the world. Because abused people continue to abuse. But when you educate someone, you can help them process through that abuse. And then, when you have that, now you have almost a clean slate, and then new opportunity emerges. So, if you want to take responsibility like that, reach out, let's connect. If you don't, you're basically saying you're okay with watching the world burn, and the fact that still 20,000 kids a day die. There's still child sex trafficking. There's a insane campaign right now where a still experimental, whatever you want to call it, the vaccine, is being rolled out and implemented for kids where we have no idea the long-term side effects. And all of this is just happening. And right now everyone's basically glued to their phones. And I'm not demonizing phones, but I'm just saying we need to have common sense. So we have to look at who are we in this? What is my point? What is my responsibility? And then unite together. And that's why we have the self-perfected group. It's people that care, people that want to see a change for themselves and for others. Some people, no one has it all figured out right now. Because if we did, we'd definitely have a world where all those kids aren't dying. We'd definitely have a little different approach to healthcare and food and water and resource distribution. But that's why I'm doing this, and I will keep doing it until the job is done. You'll see me and Jessica do this when we have kids. This is what we will be working on. And I would encourage you to join us. Come have fun with us. Come join us in the Global Hangouts. Talk about this stuff. Make some videos of your own. Influence those around you. It's not actually that hard. It's a bit of a challenge. You know, it's not an overnight thing. But anything real, sustainable, that's the change. I'll end with this one other point. I've been talking to a lot of people about this analogy of, especially when you do start to take on more responsibility, it can be a little discouraging right away because it's like, I feel like things should be happening faster. Okay, you ever watch a tree grow? You have a tree in your yard or at the park by your house or apartment or wherever you live. You ever watch that tree grow? Day after day, you don't see any change. Week after week, you may or may not see any change. But month or season later, that tree grew. You see it after a year, that tree really grew. That's you. That's me. We're all that tree. And every single day that you're applying yourself, taking on more responsibility, that's like you growing and nurturing that. And so don't get discouraged. This ain't some motivational pep talk here. This is just common sense. Be patient with yourself, but also be urgent at the same time. Hold that paradox within yourself. Hold that polarity. Patient urgency. And the quote that I posted today on my Facebook was, what is it? No hurry, no pause. I think that was it. No hurry, no pause. And it's basically saying don't rush, but don't stay still. And find that perfect sweet spot balance. And within that, take responsibility for that. Every breath, every moment, take that responsibility, accumulate that, look at the world, see how am I responsible for this? How are we responsible as individuals and collectively? And then connect. Take the responsibility to reach out. Let's connect. Let's have real conversation. I could introduce you to someone that could totally change your life, or vice versa. Or are we just going to let our mind take over and just go back to status quo? Well, I'm not going to, but you might. So let's see. The choice is yours.